Before this podcast begins, I would like to mention I am not an expert and I'm more importantly not a doctor, and even more so, not your doctor. This is my current knowledge, and to be honest, it's a basic and fairly rudimentary understanding of steroids. I encourage all of you to do your own research. Most importantly, if any of you are considering steroid use, go and talk to your doctor about it before you do anything. Your health is your greatest asset. Alright, thanks.
Podcast starting 3, 2, 1. What is up, everyone? This is our third episode of World of Lifting podcast. Today's topic is steroids, but we have a special guest, personal friend of mine, Tim Wu. He is a pre-vet student at Cornell University and a genius. What's up, man?
Not so much a genius, but I'm doing all right. Doing pretty good.
Yeah, so we're gonna jump right into it. So our first topic is, what are steroids and what do they do? Obviously, they are all based off of testosterone, and people use them for the various muscle building effects, sex drive, strength, and all that good stuff. But what have you seen so far in steroid use, like as what they do?
A majority of steroids are based off of testosterone, or they activate the androgen receptor. Androgen receptor is what testosterone and its family of steroids bind to.
Yeah.
Technically, testosterone is a member of the family called androgens, which is part of like the bigger steroid group of hormones. Generally speaking, they just help build muscle, help you make yourself more masculine, I guess. It's probably the best way to describe it. Deepening of the voice, growing out hair, stuff like that. Generally makes you more aggressive.
Yeah.
Testosterone is probably the most well-known one, although there are definitely other androgens and other hormone like receptor modulators that are also used as steroids.
Yeah, well, the more recently we're seeing selective androgen receptor modulators, and those are they were made to mimic those effects of steroids, but take away most of the bad side effects, like the gyno or the shrunken balls, or I'm not sure, but
yeah. The main reason why SARMs are actually were produced and were in testing was actually because it's largely used as a cancer treatment, or like care for people who are cancer. The
What
thing
kind of
is with
cancer?
just cancer in general, because cancer, especially with chemotherapy and radiation therapy, people tend to like shrivel up and like basically deteriorate pretty quickly. And so the problem is, like, if a female has cancer and she's going through that like deterioration when she's undergoing chemo, it's hard to just pump her full of testosterone, because you get all the masculinizing effects of that, and it actually will end up rendering them infertile as well. Although chemo also tends to do that, but it's just a matter of like
for women.
It's for a woman and for men, because there are certainly negative side effects of testosterone too. For example, with testosterone, a lot of people, if you dose them up on testosterone, you'll end up increasing their rates of, for example, prostate cancer later in life, because testosterone isn't like a hormone alone in and of itself. It gets converted into other hormones, primarily estrogen through aromatase, and what's it called? Damn. DHT through, I think it's a 5-alpha reductase, but like the problem is
cell division is like a lot faster, right?
It's just that DHT doesn't have the same anabolic effects on muscle, but it has a much more androgenic effects when it comes to things like prostate, prostate, and like other organs. Like it tends to grow those, which
enlarged prostate is no good.
Certainly not a good thing. So a lot of the times when you give testosterone to a person, you need to add other drugs. For example, aromatase inhibitors. Usually hear these in the steroid bodybuilding community as AIs. But
Yeah.
you usually have to minimize the side effects or minimize the chance of aromatization because of that. Also, another thing is testosterone's pretty strong, and SARMs generally. Well, SARMs you need to use a lesser dose. Technically, they're stronger than testosterone, but yeah, you won't get the same effects. There certainly are side effects, but not as strong as testosterone for the
Yeah.
equivalent amount of anabolic effect.
Speaking of side effects from anabolic steroid use, they typically um, enhance whatever the hell you are. So people with mental disorders should not consider taking it at all, because I heard that if you are prone to, let's say, anxiety, it will bring it out more, or like make it worse. Um, Other side effects include obviously the gyno. That's through the estrogenic side effects. They'll um, You can get male pattern baldness, surprisingly impotence as well, which is not something you would think of when you're on testosterone.
Yeah. Too much hormone will certainly have that effect. It will make you hormones. Both testosterone and estrogen are needed to produce sperm, and it's one of those things where it's like messing around with those hormones isn't really the best thing when it comes to that. Actually, people don't know this, but estrogen is actually very vital to growing. What do you call it? Growing sperm and also transporting it through your epididymis. So, um, yeah.
So if estrogen is too low, then that's a problem.
Or estrogen is
Or
too high, you'll also run into other problems. But
okay,
it also this as far as the mental side effects go, it certainly depends on the steroid that you're taking and how strong it is. For example, I don't think it's Winstrol. It's the one that they give to cows. Um,
trenbolone.
Tren, yeah. It's
Oh my
like
God, yeah, Tren's crazy. Yeah,
the a lot of people have said that like when they're on trend, they're always in sort of like a low state of hysteria, or just like they're always a little bit mad or crazy. It certainly
yeah.
depends. Like you,
But the effects of Tren are like crazy in terms of like crazy strength. Like
yeah.
the top powerlifters use it, stuff
The
like that.
thing is with steroids is you always have to weigh the benefits to the cost. For example, trenbolone is going to mess you up when it comes to like your endogenous production of steroids. For so like if you go on a low cycle, you're going to need a PCT after that because your testosterone levels are going to be crashed.
Yeah,
Whereas, for example, like if you're on certain SARMs, I don't know, for example, like Ostarine, it's generally speaking much better for you, and you generally won't need as strong of a PCT, if a PCT at all, to recover from that. So, of course, get it. This depends per person. Get blood work done. Don't be an idiot. Don't go on
hmm
stupid doses of stuff. Like
yeah,
just. I mean, in my opinion, like people really shouldn't be doing steroids. But if you are, like, take the minimum doses needed, get the maximum gain for the least amount of side effects,
yeah.
and just be.
Well, quoting from Dr. Ben Pollock, current 198 world record holder in the total for powerlifting, he um, I don't think he openly admitted to taking it, but he hinted at it, so I think he is on it. But he had a whole YouTube video on it on his channel. He talked about how the people that are there are a lot of people that are taking grams of testosterone, and they don't even look like they work out.
Okay.
And he also talked about like using the minimum dosage to find out like how your body reacts to it is the best way to go about it. Yeah.
Something that is good to note is that different steroids don't work in the same way to build muscle. Like, for example, most androgen-based hormones like testosterone, I like, and basically most of like the quote unquote like anabolic steroids that you think of are generally like androgen receptor modulators, and they will increase muscle growth that way. But you also have other steroids. I can't think of any off the top of my head that will, for example, like activate IGF-1 pathways. I think growth hormone is going to do this.
Yeah, right. Growth hormone
Although
probably.
growth hormone really doesn't actually cause any actual muscle growth in and of itself. It's not really an anabolic hormone at all. What actually happens is that your liver has receptors for growth hormone on it, and then your liver will release IGF-1, and IGF-1 is actually what causes the growth in and of itself. Although there is some research that shows that growth hormone does have some anabolic effect, although a majority of that is because of IGF-1.
So it just promotes your body's ability to produce more hormone.
It growth hormone. Okay, so the thing with growth hormone is it's also like a very, very strong nutrient partitioning or like a nutrient repartitioning agent. So this is why when people are fasting, you see very, very, very high levels of growth hormone. It's because growth hormone is actually needed for lipolysis, with the actual turning your body fat into energy. So the thing is with that is that when you are fasting, your liver will decrease the sensitivity or decrease the amount of receptors it has for growth hormone, and it will therefore decrease the amount of IGF-1 it releases. So just because you have high growth hormone doesn't mean you're releasing a lot of IGF-1, and because of that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're causing a lot of growth. People who are fasting, it's quite obvious that they're not gaining mass, like they're not getting huge, but their growth hormone is pretty high. But that's because growth hormone isn't being used to signal the IGF-1 pathway that then causes further muscle growth. So it's one of those things where it's like you don't want to like seriously overdose on testosterone without also like
That's a great one. Is that even possible to overdose on a steroid?
Look, I actually don't know if it's possible to overdose necessarily on testosterone. I'm sure there's a way you could kill yourself if you have enough of it, but you got to be real dumb to do that. It's just a matter of like you get less and less anabolic effect for more and more side effects as you increase the dosage.
More is not better in terms of this. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, if you're going to take drugs, take the least amount of like testosterone, take the least amount of whatever you can take. But also, if you want to make maximum amount of gains, I guess you would theoretically be better off taking, for example, growth hormone, a low dose of growth hormone or a low dose of like something like that, and testosterone, because then you're working on multiple parts of like the chain that helps build muscle rather than just trying to single out one area or like one specific pathway that helps build muscle.
Yeah. So we're talking about testosterone and HGH. Another, and trenbolone. We talked about trenbolone as well. Another big injectable steroid that is also used is, I guess, common for cyclers. What we call EPO.
EPO, yeah. Truth be told, I actually don't know too much about EPO. It does help with what do you call it? Red blood cell production, I think. It's actually
that's important for endurance athletes. Yeah.
It's actually produced by your own body in the kidneys, and it's one of those things that just boosts your red blood cell count. And higher red blood cell, you can imagine more oxygen carrying capacity in your blood. Actually, if you go to something that's cool is the amount of red blood cells in your body is actually measured by something called hematocrit, which is a percentage. So whenever you take your own blood and then you like centrifuge it, you have like the bottom portion. That's usually the red blood cells. You have a thin layer in between those. That's usually white blood cells and other proteins. And you have the area above it, which is just like a clear liquid called plasma. And hematocrit is like the percentage of your blood that is red blood cell. I think for most people, it should be around 40-45%. Let me check.
It shouldn't be like too much.
The thing is, red blood cells are pretty thick. Like they're thick boys. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you have too much red blood cells in your system, your blood becomes too thick and your heart has to work harder to pump it. And that becomes a problem real fast. There are stories of elite cyclists having to wake up in the middle of the night to cycle, to like actually work out, because their heart rate would drop so low and their blood was so thick that they would die because they weren't getting enough blood to their tissues.
Isn't hematocrit can also be high just from dehydration?
Oh yeah, hematocrit will differ based on like just, for example, hydration status. Where you live also plays a huge role. If you live in a low oxygen environment, you generally have higher hematocrit because your body will overproduce red blood cells. to counteract that.
Ah,
For example, that's why like if you
like
see
like
people training for the Olympics, usually before they
yeah.
go to the Olympics, they'll usually train in like Colorado or like in the Rocky Mountains
Oh
because
hell yeah, yeah. That's
yeah,
crazy.
it the decreased oxygen will cause your body to produce more red blood cells.
Wait, which athletes do that?
I think
Any
basically all
sport?
athletes who train for the Olympics before the Olympics, they most of them
Really?
will end up training in the Rockies.
Even something like a rifle,
I
like
actually
a
don't know
gun
about
shoot?
that, but like honestly, honestly I don't know about all athletes, but I know a lot of them
Yeah,
do. That's actually one of the things with
yeah.
Kenyan distance runners. A lot of them train in Kenya, and a lot of them train like around where they live.
Oh, those Kenyan runners are
Yeah,
beasts. They're
uh,
crazy.
it's actually pretty high altitude there where they generally live.
Actually, speaking of endurance events, this was done by with pacers, but who's that guy that broke
Oh,
the
Elliot
marathon
Kipchoge.
record?
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah,
insane. Whew.
yeah.
I actually, to be honest, I have very, very strong doubts that he's on drugs. I don't think he is. I have a very, very strong belief that he wouldn't be on drugs because I think he has too much to risk. And also, genetically speaking, he is very elite. Like, he is genetically
Yeah.
super elite. And
Okay.
also, he
Yeah.
trains his ass off, too. And another thing is, like endurance athletes, you will see a difference if you do take drugs, but it's not like strength athletes where you just take a little bit of testosterone and then like you're throwing around weights that natties are like crying with. But like
Hmm.
yeah, I think one of the things that cyclists have a really really good time with is cyclists. A lot of it is pretty bursty, along with the endurance side. So that certainly does help. Also, higher red blood cell count certainly makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. No. I also did a little bit more research on this. The another potential side effect is tendon snapping, but
Ooh,
I also learned that it's not so much that the tendon's weak. It's
yeah,
just
you get
that
stronger too
when your
fast.
recovery rate is so high,
Yeah.
yeah, and the weights you're pushing are not generally something you
Yeah,
would be pushing
generally
naturally.
speaking, that's one of the things that you don't really see generally in most strength sports, but you actually see it quite often or fairly commonly when you go into sports like rock climbing. A lot of people who start off rock climbing, their muscles and their body get so much better at rock climbing so quickly, and a lot of them train too much in the beginning that their tendons and ligaments aren't able to recover and strengthen along with those muscles. Because the truth is that tendons, ligaments, they don't get the same amount of blood flow that muscles do, so they aren't able to recover and gain strength, I guess, gain capacity, work capacity as fast as muscles.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we talked about testosterone, trenbolone, HGH, and now well, we got the other ones like Winstrol, fucking stenozolol. Was that the same thing? Winstrol, stenozolol.
Stanozolol? Actually, I don't know. Stanozolol was very, very popular amongst weightlifters, though.
Really, I thought that was a run. I thought that was a sprinter thing.
Um, I've heard that stanozolol was actually like used quite heavily by a lot of Olympic weightlifters in the early days.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we also have other things with steroids. We got the types of esters
Oh,
like cypionate, and then they propionate testosterone. I guess that's like the half life, right? I would
yes.
imagine.
So
How?
um,
Yeah.
a thing with a lot of drugs is that your body's pretty good at clearing this stuff out. And by adding these esters, you essentially slow down the breakdown, so that's at a fairly common rate. So, like for example, like testosterone, once that stuff gets broken down, you get the ester, of course, but you also get the full version of the hormone. So,
But like
y-
longer in your body, I guess.
yeah, the slower it breaks down, the more longer release it is. That's actually a way you can actually cheat drug tests because you can go on stuff that's super short half life, and then by the time you actually go in for testing, you're in an extremely low level already. Just like stop the drugs a few days before before the test.
Yeah, that's the propionate, right? That's the extremely fast one, I
I'm
think.
not too well educated on the amount on the
Yeah,
esters.
yeah. I know cypionated and xanthate is like well, according to TRT, that's like a once every 2 weeks injection kind of thing. But yeah, another steroid we um this year is a
Yeah,
Durabolin,
Decadurabolin.
Durabolin, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
Equipoise. There's a lot of designer steroids out there, but
Um,
we can move on to
Actually, one of
yeah.
the
What?
interesting things about designer steroids is the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, and WADA had no idea it existed until one of the coaches for one of the teams actually sent in a vial of that shit to WADA, and then WADA realized like this is a drug. This is
Yeah, if you guys don't know what WADA is, WADA is World Anti-Doping.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're essentially the ones that run all the anti-doping for all the countries in the Olympic sports. They do like
yeah,
randomized drug tests and stuff. They had no idea it existed until a coach had sent it in because he thought it was like immoral and cheating the system. So yeah,
really, which
I
coach did
honestly
that?
don't know which coach, but apparently that's how they found out
Yeah,
about it. And it's one of those things where it's like drug tests are very, very particular for specific drugs for the most part. And it's one of those things where it's like a different drug is not going to be detected, even though it's going to have the same effects. And also another thing is these drugs aren't like well known what they do. For example, like nandrolone, which is Deca, like it's been studied quite heavily. Like a lot, like testosterone, of course, has been studied quite heavily, so we know basically what it's going to do to you, what most of the side effects are, like what you need to do after it, like what are the biggest threats from that stuff. But when it comes to like untested medications or like untested like chemicals, that's pretty dangerous. That's one of the things with SARMs. Like SARMs just aren't well tested enough. And it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, it may not shut down your testes in the short term, but who knows? It may cause a cancer like later on in your life. It's really not known what it actually does. It just hasn't been studied that
that's
well.
true. All right, so we're gonna move on to we have injectable forms of steroids, but we also have we got
Yeah.
oral forms, which is extremely liver toxic. We got the things like Dianabol, we got Anavar, we got Anadrol. Bodybuilders, powerlifters, whatever athlete, they usually cycle this with an injectable to stack the
hmm
effects. So yeah, so we'll start with Dianabol. So what are the effects of Dianabol?
Dianabol. I actually don't know like specific drugs too
So
well, to be honest.
yeah, back in the Arnold days, the golden age of bodybuilding, it was pretty open. Dianabol was a big thing. It was like a big mass building thing. It was like you like retained a lot of water, you bloated, you gain a lot of muscle in a short period of time, and you gain a lot of strength in a short period of time as well. And they usually stack the Dianabol with the testosterone to get even crazier
Yeah,
effects.
the thing is with a lot of the early drugs is a lot of them actually um caused a lot of androgenic side effects like masculization, acne, hair growth, voice changes, stuff like that. Um, but a lot of the fluid retention and stuff is actually from estrogen side effects. Like, I don't know if the drug would get aromatized, but the thing is that if you have a lot of testosterone, like androgen receptor modulators binding to actual androgen receptors, you have more testosterone basically free in your body. And a lot of that is going to be more readily available to be aromatized into estrogen. So you end up having just higher estrogen levels as well because of that.
Yeah, well, the problem with um, oral steroids is the how extremely
Yeah.
toxic it is for, especially
Actually,
for the
the thing
liver.
is it depends on the medication first of all, and it's a lot of oral medications because the thing is that with oral medication it has to go through your digestive tract, like it goes into your stomach and shit like that, and your body needs to be able to absorb it without like destroying it in your stomach and through your digestive tract, and that's a problem. So what a lot of drugs do is they attach chemicals to it, or they attach like things with it that prevent digestion. And the thing with that is once it gets absorbed, it generally has to go to the liver to be metabolized before it releases the actual medication into your system. Problem with that is that's why you see liver damage. That's why you see higher liver enzymes, for example.
Yeah, that's shown in the blood work. Yeah, the usually when the liver enzymes are up and you get blood work, that usually telltale sign your liver is working extra hard. Yeah,
definitely not the best thing for you.
So, yeah. Actually, we'll add another topic in here. I've seen a lot of dumb stuff online. The legal alternative steroid, which is basically just like a hyped up test booster.
Okay.
I've seen there's like this brand called Crazy Bulb,
Look,
or I don't know. There's a lot of them out there. They claim to have all the effects of steroids, but none.
I wouldn't
no
trust
side
that
effects.
stuff. A lot of those times,
Yeah,
those quote unquote like supplements are just like a rebranded, like I don't know, like cheap steroid. Um, I don't know. For example, like I'm sure like what's it called, Dianabol or something like that is not terribly expensive to produce, especially since it's been in production for such a long time. And they'll just add that stuff in with the pills, or maybe the pill just basically contains like nothing, and you won't get any effect at all.
yeah,
In which case, you're just throwing away money. Although arguably, throwing away money is better than destroying your health through that
yes,
type of stuff.
yeah, yeah. So okay, now we have SARMs. A lot of SARMs out there. I have no idea when this stuff started, but I know is that they work. They're legal only for research purposes. That's how they get around like it being legal. I know they're trying to pass something to
Hopefully,
make
they
them
will be
illegal.
legal within the next few years because honestly, in my opinion, there's so little research on them that it's probably better that people aren't allowed to take them because,
I mean, anabolic steroids in the U.S. It's already a
yeah,
class 3 drug. I don't know what offenses you get if you get caught with it. I
I
don't know
think
if
I
it's
think
like
it's just a fine unless you caught with like large enough amounts where they think you're dealing. If you're dealing, I
okay.
think
Oh,
you go
okay.
to prison
Okay.
for a while. I think if you just caught with it, it doesn't really matter. Also, another thing is like,
Like they just take it away and then you're like you have to
yeah.
pay this
Also,
much.
another thing is
Like,
I'm sure the cops really don't give a shit. Like who really
oh yeah,
cares?
the
Like
thing, the
if you're
thing,
on steroids.
yeah, the thing that stood out to me was Ronnie Coleman was a
Yeah,
police officer, and Ronnie Coleman 8-time Mr. Olympia, and no one really thought to like
yeah.
test
I
him.
think he had actually
Like,
talked about it where he was like the
yeah,
police like it's in my opinion it's a waste of the police's time to be able to have to go after that stuff. I'm sure the police.
yeah, and the tests are insanely
Yeah,
expensive
I mean, like
for steroids.
the
I would
police
think, right?
already have enough work on their hands, and they already have a lot of stuff that they got to deal with. That, in my opinion, like little shit like this, where it's like if people want to ruin their health, that's for them, you know. And it's like it's honestly like, in my opinion, a waste of the police officer's time when they have.
And besides the fact that if you get pulled over by Ronnie Coleman in his prime,
Yeah,
you're
you're
not
not
gonna move.
moving anywhere,
Like, what
dude.
the fuck are you gonna? Yeah, yeah, you're like, oh shit, okay, yeah,
um,
yeah. Moving back to SARMs, we got Ostarine, we got LGD, Ligandrol, Cardarine, and they all have, I guess, mimic like stuff like testosterone, strength building like Anavar and all that stuff. But yeah, they current I know powerlifting they just added the I don't know how recent it was, but they added SARMs to the ban list. So if you get tested positive for that, you're whatever record you broke or you just
yeah.
get stripped of it. So
Technically, Cardarine isn't a SARM because SARM literally means selective androgen receptor modulator, which means it binds to the androgen receptor and can either have agonistic, which means it mimics testosterone, or antagonistic, which means it basically just takes up that receptor and doesn't cause really any effect. So you basically see a decrease. But Cardarine technically isn't a SARM in that definition. It works on some different pathway, but if I'm correctly, it's basically just called exercise in a bottle because it increases your cardiovascular performance by quite a lot. Yeah, but it's technically not a storm.
Yeah. Going back to the testing and all that, I've always wondered why the IOC holds. Well, I don't know if it's IOC, but maybe it's WADA. They hold on to samples, urine
Oh yeah,
samples for
yeah,
so
of course.
long. Like just recently, I think a couple years back,
Yep.
Alexei Tarakti, no, yeah, Tarakti. He was Olympic champion in the 105 kilo class in Olympic weightlifting, and he was recently caught with a banned substance. Yeah, back in from 2012 that he when he produced his urine sample, and they found something like 6
Yeah,
years
in my
later.
opinion, I think it's good that they do these retroactive drug tests, because a lot of these drugs, we don't really have effective tests for them right now, or the tests that we do have aren't really the greatest, or they're just medications that we don't test for. And it's one of those things where it also serves a like a preventative thing, where it's like, yo, like if you do drugs, we may not bust you now, but we'll bust you 5 years from now, you know?
Yeah, which is a problem because it's a big hit on your reputation. Even though it's obvious, but like, there's always like the doubt maybe he's not on it. But like, yeah. So now we're gonna start talking about their use in sports. So steroids in strength sports, is bodybuilding considered a strength sport?
No, I don't
know. But strongman, Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting. So in Olympic weightlifting, if you guys didn't know, Russia got taken off 2020 Olympics. They got banned again. 2016 they were banned. 2020 they're gone again. Well, 2021 now since of this COVID situation.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where it's like, to deny that steroids don't have an effect is just wrong. They're going to make you stronger, faster, better, basically. Of course, you still need to work hard even with the drugs, but the truth is that a lot of people start drugs when they're early or young, and then they just keep on taking them. And the thing is with that is, one, it's terrible for you, but two, it certainly gets you good-ass results. It certainly makes you progress real fast. There are stories of Eastern Bloc countries with kids being given like little like bottles of Dianabol or bottles of other steroids to take home and take, like when they're in these Olympic weightlifting training camps. Yeah, kids are given them. They start early. But another thing is, like, these kids start training early too, so it's one of those things where it's like the drugs over a long period of time will have an effect, but also training over a long period of time will have an effect, and those combined will just make you like a monster, you know? Like, for example, Lasha Talakadze was popped for drug use when he was a junior lifter. And you're going to tell me that he's added, I don't know, like 20, 30 kilos onto his total while, quote-unquote, like, cleaning up? Like, I don't think that's true. You know, like, it's quite obvious.
Well, they just found
it's one of those things where it's like he's more than likely on something, but in my opinion, like, that's okay.
Like, one of the lifters I look up to, Ilya. My God, got popped so many times. Like, both of his Olympic gold medals stripped. For some reason, world championship medals he still has them. Like, I'm guessing they don't hold on to samples from world.
I honestly don't know
how
WADA does world championships.
Because I'm thinking maybe they tossed the samples from world championships right away. I would imagine, because Ilya Ilyin would not have those titles if they still had the samples.
Ilya Ilyin, like, you see him celebrating quote unquote like PRs that are literally like 5-10 kilos under what he was able to do in his prime, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, that's probably what a clean Ilya can do, you know? He's still, of course, an elite level lifter, but he's not what he used to be with drugs. But at the same time, like drugs, they help you a lot, but in strength sports, it's one of those big debates. Honestly, I really don't have a lot of things to comment on it, because I don't know both sides of the argument too well, where it's like, in my opinion, like, I'll watch Lasha Talakadze lift, and I still love it. Like, it is incredible watching that man lift.
Breaking human.
It's like watching him lift is like not seeing like what Lasha is capable of, but more like seeing what humans are
Yes.
like capable of doing. Where it's
Well, the one thing I know, strongman, specifically the Arnold Classic Strongman competition, they don't give a crap
yeah,
about
that's
testing. They don't test at all. They just let them go. They just let them have at it. They fucking whatever the
yeah.
health you're taking, whatever. Like they just like yeah, they're deadlifting 1,000 like it's nothing. Like a 1,000 pound deadlift was freaking crazy. Like
Yeah.
maybe like 20 years ago.
In
Now
my
it's just
opinion,
like a standard. Like if you want to make it, it's like
in
you
my
have to
opinion,
get
I
that
think it would
number.
be better for them to have like a tested and untested federation, just like they do in like powerlifting. But it's one of those things where it's like you see the elite untested powerlifters. I mean, like some of them look like they're like on the edge of like dying. Like they don't look healthy, but it's it's one of those things where it's like, do you really want like the Olympics, which has like this reputation of like sportsmanship and like just quote unquote like purity, to be drugged up like that? Like if they do decide to go to untested, is my opinion untested. It's like you never have that thought in the back of your head, like, oh, maybe this person's on drugs, because everybody knows that they're on drugs. So like the fact that everyone is on drugs makes it sort of like a more level playing field.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I personally don't think powerlifting would ever be taken into the Olympics because they have a billion federations, untested, tested federations, multiply, single ply,
Yeah.
raw with
Oh,
wraps. It's something like they have to this like Olympic weightlifting. It's snatch, clean and jerk, sleeves, belt.
mm.
That's it. Go lift, and that's standard for everyone. I mean, I think some lifters use like light wraps or something, but like still, there's a like you can't be putting on like a multiply suit for fucking
I
Olympic
don't know. In my
weightlifting.
opinion,
So
like, um,
yeah,
I think powerlifting may be added to the Olympics eventually. It's just a matter of like what effect will drugs have, you know? Because like we know for a
yeah,
fact that Olympic lifting, drugs are very prevalent. Drugs are huge in Olympic weightlifting, you know? And like they have
yeah.
questioned removing it for the 2024 Olympics. They've questioned it for the 2020 Olympics too.
Oh yeah, I got yeah. I don't know if it's so much about like the
Well,
drugs or something. I don't know. I'm just imagining maybe it's like it's not
I
bringing enough
I think
revenue
it's
or
one of those
like
things
ticket
where it's
sales.
like you look at it and it makes the IOC and WADA look bad, you know, because like it's a tiny sport.
I guess
Nobody
yeah,
really watches it when compared to like running or swimming, you know, and you have athletes being
yeah,
popped
that's true.
left and right. Like you have these athletes being popped all the time, and it doesn't make the IOC or WADA look good when you have a small sport that's like called Olympic weightlifting. You know, that doesn't really have a lot of viewers, and like
Yeah.
everyone's being popped for drugs. You know, so I think it's more like a reputation thing. It certainly is small, and I think that's one of the reasons why they don't, you know, like they don't they're questioning getting rid of it, because I don't think they would ever get rid of, I don't know, for example, biking or like long distance running if people kept on getting popped.
I don't know because Olympic weightlifting it's
Yeah,
been there. It's been there since the beginning. I, it used to be a part of track and field for some reason.
I
I
don't know.
forgot
Shot put,
why.
man,
That
shot put's a
was
strength sport in my
and
opinion.
totally separate. Yeah. All right. So moving on from steroids and strength sports, now it's any other sport. Steroids were they're big in. I know the UFC fighters they get popped all the time. Pro boxers, big one cyclists. What else? Pretty sure shot putters get popped
Yeah.
at some point. I don't know, right?
Um,
I'm
I
trying to
mean, like
imagine what
basically
other
any
sport that
sport,
you
if
that
there's
you see.
money on the line, people will dope in it. Yeah. I'm like
Sprinting.
people
What am I
dope
doing?
in
Yeah.
esports too, you know? People take Xannies and like Adderalls before tournaments. Yeah.
Oh my
If
god,
there's
really?
money on the line and there's reputation on the line, people are gonna find a way to cheat the system. Um,
Yeah, crazy.
um
This. Well, I don't know. Like, what would a fighter take
you'd
compared to like a
probably take
lifter?
more
I,
endurance enhancing stuff along with strength, because like
the
I
blood
would
doping
imagine
kind of
blood
thing.
doping, but also you would also add in the strength component, of course, because fighting
Uh,
sports have both a strength and an endurance component. They tend to last pretty long, and you tend to be, yeah, you need to be pretty strong
Yeah.
too. Um,
Like the freaking boxers, man. They changed it from 15 rounds to 12 rounds. I don't know when, but it's still 12. I forgot. Is
uh,
it 3 minute
I
rounds?
honestly don't follow fighting
Crap.
sports, to be
2 minute
honest, because
rounds?
they're a little bit too bloody
I
for
think I
me.
think it's 2 minute rounds. But the fighting is you're basically
Yeah.
fighting for like close to an hour.
Yeah, no,
And
I
yeah,
can't watch fighting sports, man. I see someone take a shot to the head, and I'm like, oh no, oh that's so bad.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's brutal, you know. Uh, oh, yeah, stuff like
I
that. Yeah. So how do you? I got questions for you now. What do you see in terms of steroids, like in your
oh
studies, like in pre-vet? Like,
you give drugs to animals mainly just to like make them bigger, fatten them up. Like for example, Winstrol was given to horses to make them bigger, stronger.
what do they? What do they give? Do they
I
give
don't know if they
anything to
give anything to
chickens?
chickens. They might give them like antibiotics to help them. Like chickens, the thing is with chickens is that they grow really fast and they're in really really tight conditions, and like they don't really move a whole lot when they're being grown. So it's one of those things where your biggest fear is really like disease wiping out like an entire farm. So you load them up on drugs, like load them up on like, antibiotics and stuff.
Like,
Another thing
oh,
is
okay,
like chickens
antibiotic.
grow really, really fast.
They they don't
No,
inject them some to fatten them
you
up.
wouldn't really want to inject
Chickens? I
chickens.
feel like
That
they
would
do.
take way too long because like a 10,000 chicken farm, like that would be ridiculous getting a needle for every one of them. Um,
Oh yeah, that's true.
yeah, if you want to drug them up, I guess you could give it to them through food. Although that's one of those things where it's like selling that meat to the end consumer is going to be much rougher. Although to be honest,
Yeah, now yeah, they're like
to be honest
aware of
though,
it now. They're like, oh, I want
I
free
don't know
range
too much
chickens or
about
something.
like the meat industry. Like I'm not like a meat industry expert. Like I know like some basic stuff about it, but it's one of those things where it's like yeah,
I know it's brutal, man. It's
you
crazy.
will.
Like I know that that documentary about Tyson chicken.
I've watched a few. Like for example, like I've watched Food Inc.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I think that was the
I'm
one.
not a big fan
Wait,
of
was
Food
that the
Inc.
one? I'm not sure, but
It misrepresents our food system quite a bit. Our food system is quite different from that, and in my opinion, I'm much more pro farmer than like what Food Inc. portrays. Like I think GMOs aren't a bad thing. I think GMOs are fine. It's like a tool, sort of like a hammer, where it's like you can use it for good, but you can also use it to kill someone. It's a tool, and it depends on how you use it. Um,
oh, another thing. So there are sports where animal is not really much the human is involved. We're talking about something
like
like
sled dog
equestrian.
racing, equestrian sports.
Um,
Yeah.
like yeah, what do they
Oh,
like? Do they dope
horse
animals
racing.
in those
Yes.
sports?
Horse
Like
racing. Yes.
yeah, horse
That
racing. I would
that's for
imagine. Yeah.
sure. Oh,
What are they? Like,
they do drug testing
Winstrol
on horses
or
now.
something else?
Certain drugs are allowed. For example, there's been
Oh, they
they do
allow certain
test for drugs,
drugs.
but there are
That's
certain drugs
crazy.
that are allowed. Like I forgot, there's been one that's been making the rounds, and it's been pretty contentious because it's basically a really really heavy painkiller. A thing with horses is that like a lot of them have like it's painful to run so fast. It's painful to push yourself so hard. So yeah, they do test for that stuff. Sometimes it's allowed. Certain medications are allowed. Um, like there are a lot of drugs are banned though. Um, for example, like I know people have given erythropoietin and growth hormone to horses. That's definitely banned. Um, but there's also other stuff that isn't banned. I forgot what the drug is called. It's basically a painkiller. But if you dose them up high enough, like it certainly improves performance.
Yeah, yeah. That's.
Actually, I think the Triple
What about like
Crown winner, I forgot his name. Um, the most recent Triple Crown winner. Okay, so for those of
the
you, the
horse's
horse's
name
name.
or like the dude's name or whoever?
Wait,
Oh, I don't know. I don't follow that at all. I have no idea what goes on.
is it called the Triple Crown for? Yeah. Um. So for those of you who don't follow horse racing, there are three major horse races a year. Kentucky Derby, I think the Preakness Stakes, and the Belmont Stakes. There are they're basically the three biggest horse races horse races in the year, and there are very very few horses that can win all three in one year. Um, uh,
Oh
the
crap.
most recent one was Justify in 2018. Yeah, and Justify, if I remember correctly, had tested positive. I think the New York Times did an article on it where they exposed it, where it had tested positive for that drug a little bit or a little bit after one of the major races of the year. Um, Actually, horse racing is pretty interesting. I don't know. Some of the horses are honestly really really awesome stories. Um, what's it called? I'm trying to think of the horse's name. I don't know. I can't think of it. Oh, no, Secretariat is one of the probably the most famous horse racing horse of all time. Uh, he was crazy.
Okay.
All right,
3, 2, 1. We're back. All
so
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, it's a big thing in horse racing. I'm not too well versed on sled dogs and sled dog racing, so I really don't really know how big of a thing it is there. But I know in horses it's a thing for sure.
Do they give anything
Pigs,
to the pigs?
honestly, I'm not so sure. I know cows. Sometimes people will give them drugs before they get slaughtered to like fatten them up, make them bigger. Although to be honest, a lot of that stuff has been going down quite dramatically in the past few years because consumers don't like it. Even though realistically speaking, it doesn't
Yeah.
really affect your health in any way. It doesn't. It really doesn't. For
Oh, it
example, like
doesn't?
people are afraid of RBST in milk. Like you see RBST free milk. Um,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I see that all
that's
the
the
time. Yeah.
RBST stands for recombinant bovine somatotropin, which is basically cow growth hormone. And in reality, like yeah, it might get passed on to the milk, but in reality, your digestive system will wipe that stuff out. Yeah,
So it's basically non-existent.
you're dumping
Even if
everything into
it
a
is,
vat
it
of
just
acid anyway. Like not much is getting out of there in one piece.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's like the argument of like if someone swallows
Ooh,
maggots in their food.
yeah. No. I don't want to think about that.
Yeah, I would imagine they would get
Although
destroyed by your vat of acid.
certain pathogens can make it past, so yeah, that is a problem.
Oh God. Okay. So I know so it's a big deal in the food
I
industry. Uh, any other myths you like to bust
food.
in terms of our food,
Uh, we certain.
like the RBST or like so
Not.
we give
I don't think it's
trenbolone
a.
to
I don't think it's
cows.
a big thing. I
Isn't
don't
that
even
like
know if
we're gonna
people
get a
still do that anymore. It was originally developed for it, but I don't know if we still do
oh
that.
really? Yeah, isn't it weird we're injecting
We do it for
ourselves a drug
Winstraw
that's
too.
made for
Like
cows?
we take Winstraw that's made for horses. Like
Yeah,
like like a lot of the times,
yeah,
like the doses bodybuilders are on are like enough to kill a cow, and you're like, how are you still alive? Like, how are you still breathing?
yeah. Well, it's crazy. Well, yeah, I don't know. Well, my opinion on steroids is if you're gonna if you're thinking about going not natty, do your shit, do your research, do your blood work, find out what your levels are at, and like my friend said, don't fucking jam the whole vial in the syringe and fucking take like 10,000 grams of that in one sitting. Just fucking
You'd be in for
more is
one
not better
hell
in
of
this
a time if
situation.
you did that. 1,000 grams in one sitting.
Yeah,
Oh, dude, your
yeah,
blood is no longer.
yeah, and if when athletes do steroids, cycle off. Don't be on one
Also, another thing
long
is
big
like,
cycle.
if
That's
if if you're taking drugs, I think it goes without saying, like, if you're gonna compete, go into the untested categories. Like if there is an untested category, go into the untested category. And like honestly, like if you're on drugs,
yeah,
and there is no untested category, just don't compete. Just chill. There's no reason to lie about it. Getting caught is a big problem. You're running into some big issues there. And also, it's an immoral thing because a lot of people aren't on drugs, and you're like taking that stuff away from them. You know?
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
it was nice having you on the podcast. We talked about a lot of good stuff. Any closing thoughts or
Do
anything?
your shit. If you're gonna go on drugs, take the least doses possible, like he said. And more than anything, don't be an idiot. Like, yeah, that's really all I can say. Just don't be an idiot.
Yeah, health is your greatest wealth, guys. Yeah. All right. Signing out, guys.
Yeah.
All right. That was good.